Hey guys, it's Courtney King with King Realty and Management. Look what I have behind me. We're going to start recording our podcast here in the next week or so. So in preparation for that, just stay tuned. I'll be posting some things on where you can find our podcast and what it's going to be about. So today we're talking a little bit about lease renewals and kind of best practices and strategies for increasing your overall return on investment, increasing rents, and just kind of dealing with your tenant during the lease renewal process. So a couple of things. When a lease is up for renewal, it's a really good idea, maybe about 45 to 60 days before it ends, to do a walkthrough. The walkthrough, especially if you haven't been in there for a long time, is going to give you a really good idea of how the tenant is taking care of the property, any kind of deferred maintenance that you may need to tackle, and just kind of give you an overall picture of if you even want to renew the lease or not, okay? So in an ideal world, you would do that walkthrough and you would find the house very well maintained, clean, and you've had great experience with your tenant thus far and they've paid their rent on time. So all of that is good. The next thing that you want to do is you want to pull rental comps to see what the rental rates are doing in the area, just so that you kind of have a little bit more of justification for any changes to your lease or the rental rate, okay? Then, and this is kind of really the heart of my message, is if a tenant is paying their rent on time, they're taking really good care of the property, and overall you've had a good experience with them, you walk a very fine line when it comes to increasing rent. Let's face it, guys, rental rates right now across DFW are nuts. And so as a landlord, you're going to have to kind of weigh and see what's going to be better for you, and also keeping in mind the tenant. So if you're having a good experience with the tenant, then maybe you bump the rent up just a little bit, but not necessarily totally what the market suggests. For example, oftentimes we like to reward tenants for being great tenants, and so we may do only a $25 or a $50 rental rate increase, versus I've seen apartments and other companies do a $200 a month rental increase. And so oftentimes if you jump so high when it comes to the increased rent, it could force them to move, which ends up costing you more money because now you have to pay the commission to re-rent the property, and then also just that time that it's vacant potentially between tenants. And then again, if you have a great tenant who's taking good care of the property, it's like, okay, do you want to necessarily risk moving on to a whole nother tenant if you bump the rate up so high? So I think there's a fine line, and we do offer like a little bit of grace for our tenants, and just show them how much we appreciate them. And so, like I said, kind of to be safe, between $25 and $50 is good. Now, if they're way, way below market rent, because let's say they've been there for like 10 years, then you could also build or scale up the rental increase. And so there's lease renewal forms. Everything has to be in writing, of course. But in order to offset kind of those rising expenses, taxes and insurance and that kind of stuff, you may want to ramp up or scale up, especially if they're way under market. So maybe over the first 6 months, you do a $25 increase. Over the following 6 months, you do another $25 increase, just to kind of get them exactly, or somewhat in line with the comps. Another thing to take into consideration is if you have any inkling of selling your property, then you want to weigh that with renewing the lease and all of that good stuff. Because let's say you want to sell the property in springtime, then maybe you don't do a 1-year lease renewal. Maybe you do a slightly shorter term lease renewal to put you at a ideal time of year to be listing the property for sale. So a lot of little variables, but I think it's important to know and weigh those costs So if you have somebody that's great, and that's taking good care of the property, I would, pay a lot of attention to that, And most tenants understand, because we actually explain it to them, the rise in rent is to offset the rising expenses. And so a lot of tenants just don't have that perspective as a landlord because they've never been a landlord. So when you break it down like that, and you do that walkthrough and you kind of talk and feel them out, it just helps everybody come, and achieve a win-win. So if you are looking for market data to determine how much of an increase you should increase the rent on a lease renewal, feel free to give us a call or comment below or send me a private message, and I'm happy to pull those comps for you. But make sure you get into the property. Before you do anything, get into the property and compare all of these things that we've discussed with your long and short-term goals. Don't forget to follow us here on Facebook. We're also on Instagram at King Realty DFW, and then our website is kingrealtytx.com. And I will see you later, and more info on our podcast coming soon. See you later.